we've decided to introduce more conflict into DTNS, right, Patrick?
Absolutely not, Tom. That is a preposterous claim.
See? Now you're more interested. We're also going to start titling the episodes with clickbait. 5 things Patrick believes about YouTube's fight with the music industry you won't believe. Thank goodness Zoe brought bacon for everyone in the chat room.
That is also interesting because it justifies her name.
It does. It was justified. Cord killer's joke.
I don't know Cord Killers, but I know the show Justified.
Well, we're watching Justified on Spoiler in Time with Cord Killers.
Ah. It's a good show. I mean, the first couple of seasons were excellent. I think to season 3. After that, I'm a little bit less.
Yeah, it went downhill for you. I've heard other people say that the first season was hard for them, but then it got better.
Really?
Yeah.
It's got that. I've heard that term, and I think it's very appropriate for today's world. Macho tender or tender macho or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's. It was at E3. It was because of all of the, like the. Maybe you haven't seen the trailers and all of this, but there's a bunch of video game characters that are like super macho, but at the same time kind of, kind or dads or
right,
like macho.
Like The
tender.
Rock. He's macho. He's macho, but he's caring and kind.
No, I think it's not that macho. It's more of a hipsterish macho, like the beard and the rough. Maybe it's a little bit more rough and grizzled and than macho. It's not like WWF macho. WWE.
Right. It's not like the World Wildlife Foundation macho.
the wrestling people. Although maybe wildlife do wrestle.
The wildlife people get pretty macho. I'm going to say they're out there in the wilderness wrestling with bears.
That is true.
I assume that's what the WWF people do. That's what I've been told to myself when I was guessing.
Yeah, it does. I think it would make for a much more interesting WWF.
What if the WWF like, you know what? We did it all wrong when we got control of this anagram. We should have leaned into the previous usage of it.
No, they could have made it like a mix of both with
right. How much more money would they raise?
Scripted animal wrestling.
Yeah. All right. Enough of that before we get PETA on our case. Let's start the show.
This is the Daily Tech News Show. Tom's birthday is at the end of this month, so why don't you get him what I got him? $12. To donate $1 a month to DTNS, go to patreon.com/DTNS. Happy birthday, Tom.
This is the Daily Tech News for Tuesday, June 21st, 2016. I'm Tom Merritt. Joining me today, Patrick Beja, firmly ensconced in Europe again and feeling no longer the effects of jet lag. How are you, Patrick?
I am excellent. I thought you were going to say in Finland, but I'm actually going to France tomorrow, so it would have been somewhat inaccurate.
That's why I bailed and said Europe, because I'm like, you know what? I bet he's moving around again, but I know he's not going far, so figured I was safe.
True. Yes, I am in Europe and very happy to be here.
We're going to talk about all the artists, Taylor Swift, Paul McCartney, binding together to trample your fair use rights. It depends on how you look at it, either for artists, musician rights to make more money, or to change the copyright laws in the United States. But let's start off with the headlines. Twitter is adding a video section to its app. When you tap a video, Twitter will launch watch mode, where you can see other suggested videos. It's a way to just keep you watching videos. The maximum length of videos on Twitter will increase from 30 seconds to 140 seconds. Twitter also let Vine users add a 140-second video alongside the normal 6-second video. Vine users can also run ads on their videos, get 70% of the revenue, so a normal split. And video creators can use a new app called Engage, by Jean-Luc Picard to track their analytics and filter Twitter mentions. Twitter will roll out longer videos to users starting on Tuesday, and longer Vine videos will start with a small group of influencers. So not all you Vine people are going to get it yet.
Ah, those fabled influencers. That term has been bandied around for years, and it has almost lost its meaning, but not really. Marketing people know what it means.
We call them special people here at DTNS. Longer Vine videos will start with a small group of special people.
I think that works too. My favorite thing about that piece of news is the fact that it's 140 seconds video. It's right. Just, there is some, I think, and a little bit over 2 minutes. I think that is a pretty good amount of time for video to have some actual content. There must be something mystical about the 140 the number,
Yeah. Whoever set the byte limit for SMS back in the day at 140 characters it was probably a Mason. That's what I'm going to guess.
Yeah, wasn't it 160 something? But Twitter left some room for some additional
headers and stuff, maybe, or something. Yeah. I think you're maybe right about that. So it is a Twitter made up number now that I think about it. Anyway, Twitter really betting on video. So yesterday we had the Magic Pony announcement that if you didn't hear about it, sounds really funny. But it's basically Twitter bought a company that specializes in machine learning related to video and image recognition. And today they're saying, hey, we've got an easier way for you to do video. We're going to host longer video on Twitter. And you can still link out to longer videos, but it's all going to be brought together in this amazing thing. Can Twitter, this feels like putting a square peg in a round hole a little bit, though, Patrick. Can Twitter be a place for people to share video? I mean, that's Snapchat, that's Instagram, that's Tumblr even, but it doesn't seem to be Twitter.
Actually, I'm surprised about that piece of news because I've been seeing longer pieces of video on Twitter already, and maybe they were, outside links, and it was kind of seamless, so I didn't realize. But I think about 2 minutes is works on Twitter. You can interrupt. It's almost like Facebook. You're going to interrupt your Facebook browsing for a minute or two, but you're not going to watch something that lasts 20, right? And I think for Twitter, a minute, if it's humorous or has some value, you can do serious news reporting in a couple of minutes. Most I would think that most reports that are embedded in news web pages could be about 2 minutes. So I think it works, and I think it works on Twitter as well.
Although Periscope isn't limited to 140 seconds.
Maybe they're going to make it 140 minutes, or maybe that would be taking it too far with the.
And you can put a Periscope video in Twitter, obviously, and it can go on and on and on. So yeah. But Twitter betting their future on video, which.
Well, I think they're making video part of their ecosystem, which is very important because video has become incredibly important. I don't think everything, I think saying they're betting their future on video, regardless of the Magic Pony, on which, by the way, I'm with Veronica on this. I don't think it was a thing. It wasn't really a fancy.
No, I insist, Patrick. Twitter is betting their future by riding a Magic Pony into the land of video.
All right. Well, anyway, so video is definitely important. We can agree on that. Instagram announced it now has 500 million Instagrammers. That's not, another term that we might be happier living without. But 300 of those are daily active users. That's a pretty impressive number.
300 million of those. That would be pretty bad if it was only 300.
300 million, obviously. This represents a growth of 100 million registered users over the past 9 months. And the company also noted that 80% of their user base is outside the US. So, 100 million registered users over the past 9 months. Obviously, not all of those are daily active users, but it is very impressive. We don't hear about Instagram all that much, and there isn't a huge amount of integration with Facebook, and yet it's still growing. Maybe it's the outside the US thing. I don't even know. It's puzzling to me that it's growing that fast.
Because
still.
It became a young. It became popular with a younger demographic, Patrick. That's why it doesn't seem obvious to us, because we are old men. But my wife works with these young YouTube creators all the time, And she's like, yeah, they're all over the Instagram. Like Instagram is hot. And this was like a year ago she started to say that. So within the past 2 years, Instagram has doubled their users. And it's because it became a place where everybody started to share their beauty shots.
But so I thought Instagram was a couple of years ago, and now it was all about the Snapchat. But maybe Snapchat is
hot
for
too.
younger.
Instagram launches in 2010. It's all about filters and the app ecosystem. Then it starts to like not fade, but it just sort of becomes a commodity. People are like, okay, there's Instagram along with Facebook and Twitter. And then it started to make like another rise alongside Snapchat, because Snapchat was temporary. Instagram was like, this is a picture I want to be permanent and share with everyone forever.
So it's different uses.
That's my theory anyway. Because I totally understand the youth.
All right, want to tell us about Tumblr? Since you understand?
I don't understand Tumblr at all. Tuesday, Tumblr announced users of Canvas and Up Close can link their accounts to Tumblr to publish live videos. So here's what's going on here. Tumblr was like, we're going to ride a magic pony of our own into the video future, but we're not going to build it. We're just going to rent other people's ponies. When a live stream starts on one of those 4 services, YouTube, Canvas, or Up Close, you'll be able to tap a share to Tumblr button, which will send a push notification to your Tumblr followers. And while the live video is there, it'll show up at the top of the Tumblr dashboard. And after it's done, it'll just show up as a regular post in your stream. And Tumblr's even partnering with Huffington Post, Mashable, MTV, a bunch of people to promote the service, use the service, and then of course Tumblr will be promoting their streams as well.
Yeah. What is Tumblr for again? Is it it's still going apparently. I mean, it hasn't disappeared completely. I'm not sure what this brings to Tumblr. Does it become kind of your dashboard because other things can be posted on it and you're aware that
it's your way of doing Facebook Live but in Tumblr, right? Tumblr wants to keep people from going to Facebook to use Facebook Live or even Periscope at Twitter. So they've decided, well, we're not going to build something. What we'll do is we'll take people who are already using these other services that want more exposure because they're getting edged out by Periscope and Facebook Live. And so we'll all partner up and say, okay, well, now you can do your live video broadcast this way. And a lot of people have big Tumblr followings, so I and there's it's mostly animated GIFs, I guess, but there is some video on there as well.
Yeah, maybe I'm being a little bit dismissive of Tumblr, and I shouldn't be, but it seems like every use you can make of Tumblr has a better equivalent somewhere else, and I'm not sure that this changes that. But
you're just a Tumblr hater, it sounds like.
I might be, yeah. I could see that being the case.
You're like, just stop tumbling, stay upright.
I'm fine with the tumbling. It's just that I don't understand.
Why do you hate gymnastics so much, Patrick?
Well, you know what I don't hate? Slack. Slack now has a feature called message buttons that lets users interact with third-party software without leaving Slack. The buttons show up at the bottom of the attachment. For instance, an Abacus expense report can have an approve or deny button, which can be selected from Slack. Services can develop 5 buttons per attachment. Among the 12 launch partners are travel site Kayak, project management service Trello, and more.
Yeah, if you actually want to entertain yourself with the amazing naming conventions of modern day apps, go read all of the people who are partnering with Slack on this because they feel like a list out of Silicon Valley, the TV show. But this is really cool because now there's another reason not to leave Slack. Slack says as long as your app isn't trying to mimic functions of Slack, we're fine with it. Where have we heard that before, though? I wonder when Slack hits its Twitter moment, right?
Yeah.
However, for the time being, like Trello is the one that's really impressive because with the Trello app, you go in and you can like assign a project through Slack, and then it's sort of like, set a deadline, invite another person to this project. Like there's tons of things you can do with it. So it's kind of crazy to think about, and it's a small thing. I know a bunch of you are making fun of us right now. Like, really, it's that hard to click a link and go into your Trello app and do all that? But it saves you that much more cognitive load, I guess.
There is definitely value in this because people who use Slack will know that it's a very it's sort of the connecting tissue for a lot of things. And sure, you can go launch another app and click there, but if you don't have to, there's no reason not to. And it's pretty clever from Slack's side. It feels like chat apps that are very popular right now, and that's like integrating a portion of a chat app into what's already a chat app. I mean, for it makes sense. It maybe for people, I don't think people wouldn't understand it, but maybe for people who don't use Slack, it wouldn't make sense.
I think there's a lot of people who just don't get Slack at all, and this is not going to help you understand Slack anymore. But like, yeah, somebody puts a Trello card in there, and you're like, okay, attach a conversation. I'm going to change the due date. Yeah, and you just do it more quickly. It's IRC on steroids. Should I read them? You can integrate beyond Kayak and Trello, Current, Kip, Kyber, PagerDuty, Qualtrics, RiffC, TalkDesk, and TalkUs.
Let's move on.
It's like word salad. Tencent, the owners of WeChat and QQ, agreed to buy a majority stake in video game developer Supercell from SoftBank for $8.6 billion. Wall Street Journal reports that the deal would value Supercell, which, by the way, if you're like, who's Supercell? They make Clash of Clans. The deal would value Supercell at $10.2 billion. Supercell joins League of Legends because Riot Games also is in Tencent's portfolio. SoftBank made the move in an attempt to reduce its $80 billion in net debt, roughly a third of which is tied up with Sprint here in the United States. The company also stated it would sell at least $7.9 billion in Alibaba shares for similar reasons. SoftBank also announced that President and COO Nikesh Arora is stepping down after nearly 2 years with the company. He was the foreordained successor to Satoshi-san, or Masayoshi-san, who will stay on now for the next 5 to 10 years.
It's I mean, Clash of Clans, or more generally, Supercell, is one of the 3 big mobile app development companies. We know that Activision snapped up King a few months ago. They were already part of SoftBank, obviously, but for me, Supercell is the one that actually makes games and not just pastimes, and they have actual gameplay, engaging gameplay, and so they're the only ones in that field that didn't just happen to be there at the right time with the right app. They worked to get. That sounds bad. You know what I mean, right? The other companies like King and Rovio have not been able to reproduce the success they've known with their games like Angry Birds and Candy Crush. So Supercell, I think, is more valuable because it's the know-how and the actual game development that you buy. It must have been a hard choice for SoftBank to make. I don't know how much they paid for Supercell initially. I'm guessing they made a pretty penny on that operation. But yeah, SoftBank not going incredibly well.
I think a lot of it has to do with that bet on Sprint, and the jury is way out on whether that was a good call or not. They're doing interesting things with Sprint, but that is a long-term bet. That's going to take a while to pay off. Probably not until 5G becomes launched will Sprint be able to tell whether they really have a future or not. I worked for ZDNet. I worked for ZDTV back when it was owned by SoftBank, and SoftBank divested us. They split it up. They sold ZDNet to CNET. They sold Tech TV to Paul Allen. They sold the key events media to some investors. Then Comdex went belly up. Like Masayoshi-san carved that asset up and got out of it at what is probably the right time. Not because everything was going to go belly up, aside from Comdex, but because these were not growth enterprises anymore. And I wonder if that's the calculation here, where he's like, yeah, Supercell would be great for somebody who's making games and they can use that technology, but it's not a growth enterprise anymore. That's one possibility. And the other possibility is, wow, we just have to sell some stuff because we owe so much for Sprint, and we can't sell Sprint because that would just be a loss at this point.
Yeah, maybe it's a little bit of both, and it's probably easier or more appropriate for Tencent, that is becoming a pretty significant player in the gaming market, player in the
Yeah.
See
Oh,
what
I see what you did because it's games and they're playing.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
I think your
that's
point. I
funny.
think your point
So
about using Supercell as a dev is a good one.
Yeah. So basically, it's possible that Supercell can go farther in the gaming market with the growth of esports and things like that. But maybe it takes a curator that is really into games and that knows that market specifically.
Well, yeah. What Tencent can do is say, let's use Supercell's talent to make other things better, even if we're not going to make a ton of money off Supercell in the future. Exactly. Or maybe vice versa, some of the things that Tencent owns feed into Supercell and help them to turn into a money-making thing. Neither of those things seem to have been opportunities for SoftBank.
Yeah. Users of Google's Android and iOS apps can now take advantage of a simpler two-factor authentication to log into Google accounts. Users need to go to myaccount.google.com to enable the Google Prompt option. Once enabled, you can tap a pop-up in the Google app when you need to verify a login. However, you can't enable Google Prompt and a physical key like YubiKey at the same time.
Yeah, so that was the deal killer for me. I was like, oh, well, I guess I won't be using this. But it's not really targeted at me, right? This is targeted at somebody who, like, I don't know what a YubiKey is from an Apple, but I do know that I have the Google app, and now I can be more secure, and all I have to do is tap a button.
Yeah, I went ahead and did it. It's a little bit weird that this is not included in the Google Authenticator. It's in the Google app instead, which pushes people to use the Google app more. I guess that's a benefit. But
right. And also, it's simpler for people to. They're like, I know what the Google app is. The Authenticator can be scary.
Maybe a little
for
bit.
newbies.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, Blizzard enabled a similar option in their Authenticator app maybe last week, I think. So, honestly,
that makes sense because everybody in Blizzard uses that Authenticator app. I mean, everybody who plays Blizzard games uses it.
Yeah. So, it's just you can have both this and the Authenticator at the same time. So it's not one or the other, even though you have to choose between this and the YubiKey or security key.
Be fair, Yahoo has been doing similar things and getting no credit for them, even though they have a huge user base because everyone just hates Yahoo right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, why not? It's a normal pace of software improvement.
The U.S. Federal Aviation Administration unveiled Part 107 Tuesday morning, setting out rules for the use of UAVs. In other words, drones, by commercial operators. Commercial operators no longer need a pilot's license, like a full-on pilot's license. Instead, they'll have to pass a knowledge test, and then they'll receive a remote pilot certificate. New rules do not address autonomous flight. Operators must maintain visual line of sight at all times. You can only operate one UAV at a time, although unlicensed operators may fly a UAV as long as they are supervised by a licensed operator. And particularly, you have to be 16 years of age or older to fly a UAV. However, you can fly one if you're under 16 as long as you have a licensed operator observing you. New rules ban night flights, require that all flights remain below 400 feet or within 400 feet of a structure.
So first of all, Part 107, awesome name. Second of all, these seem reasonable, right? Even though I know the Americans have a deep-seated hatred for all types of regulation, I think most people
had to bring ethnicity into
it. It's not. Maybe.
I had to call American an ethnicity, and why not?
Right.
No,
right.
I get what you mean. Like, there are a lot of people still complaining, like, why can't I just do this as long as I stay away from airports? And the answer is, well, yes, it starts with you need to stay away with airports. So what else do we need to define, and how do we train people on that, and where the airports are, et cetera? Most people are looking at this as a decent compromise. It's still very restrictive, though. And I think that's the biggest problem that folks are having with it is they want it to move forward faster like it seems to be in other countries. These kinds of rules were already established in other places before now. So it's just a little bit behind the game, I guess. So what people say.
My question was actually a genuine one. I was wondering if this seemed too stringent or if it seemed reasonable. But apparently, it's still a little bit. It's not riot in the streets, but it's still.
If I'm reading the reactions to this today, it's like, okay, could have been worse.
All right. Hyperloop One, the one doing tests in Las Vegas, and Russian construction conglomerate Suma Group and the city of Moscow are now exploring integration possibilities with Russia's existing transportation system. Hyperloop One sees this as the first step in a high-speed freight, connection between Europe and China. That would be interesting.
Yeah, so you have Hyperloop Transport Technologies, that's the one in California, talking to Slovakia. You have Hyperloop One talking to Russia. Kind of feel like that tells you everything you need to know about those two countries.
So they're saying they might integrate with Russia's existing transportation system. I'm not sure exactly what that means. Are they going to use the actual physical infrastructure?
Does that mean like the Hyperloop will just go right into the subway? No, probably not. I assume it means like making sure that the beginning and end points are near freight loading places or transportation hubs, etc.
Okay. I thought they were going to like use the subway like tunnels to integrate. Like
we're just going to widen the subway a little bit. Put the Hyperloop through it. Suma Group apparently owns one of the biggest ports in Russia, so that might be part of it too. Is Suma Group going, let's make sure we start in our port, and then everybody can load all their freight onto it. And wouldn't that be great for our bottom line?
Yeah. Let's okay. Yes. Also, let's make one that actually works.
Well, sure. Eventually, they're going to have to make one that works, right? But it's so much more fun to have meetings with foreign governments about investment. And honestly, part of that is getting the money from the foreign governments, maybe, that can help you build the one that works.
Yeah, probably.
Big thanks to everybody who supports us in our subreddit. Submit some stories, folks. Abatuela Condolci, Hometown Rival, Jeff Rose, T-Glass 1976, Flying Spatula, Strike at Rich 1. They all are up there at the subreddit, dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com, and that's a look at the top stories. Our main story today, 180 musical artists have signed an ad running in Washington, D.C. magazines Politico, The Hill, and Roll Call. So in other words, targeting Congress, asking for reform to safe harbor provisions in the DMCA. The ad will run today through Thursday. It criticizes safe harbor as giving streaming video services a negotiating advantage with the record labels, and that, quote, ease of use for consumers, end quote, allows tech companies to grow while artist revenues shrink. In related news, Torrent Freak released a study that DMCA takedown notices to Google search engine, so different part of the operation, have quadrupled over the past 2 years from 5.1 million to more than 22 million, looking at notices sent to Google in the first week of June for 2014 and 2016. This has been a campaign that the music industry has been undertaking this year. Their campaign is to, because most of their deals are coming up with YouTube. In fact, Universal Music Group does not have a contract with YouTube anymore. They're operating under the terms of the previous one, but they could stop at any time. They're playing hardball to get a better deal out of YouTube. If you want to understand what the Digital Millennium Copyright Act does, the DMCA, we don't have time to explain it all, but the important part for this is what's called safe harbor. So if I'm an ISP, I run a forum, or I host a video platform like YouTube, I have safe harbor. If someone uploads a copyright infringing piece of material to my platform, I'm not responsible for knowing that. I'm not responsible for having to know what is infringing and what isn't. The way DMCA Safe Harbor works is the takedown notice procedure. So if I see that my intellectual property is being infringed on this platform, I send a note to the platform and say, hey, that infringes, you have to take it down. And then that company takes it down, informs the person who uploaded it, and gives them a chance to send a counter notice that says, oh, no, they're wrong. That's not their property, or I have a fair use right. And then the platform would have to put it back up, and those two would have to go to court over it. That's the way DMCA works. The way YouTube works is they have their own content ID system that happens before the DMCA even gets invoked. So if I am a big music label, I get access to a special tool that uses a robot to go around and find music. And if it finds music that fits my profile of things I own, I get to choose whether to actually have it taken down or monetize it. And in fact, YouTube says that 99.5% of the music claims on YouTube involve Content ID, not the DMCA, and they are almost always monetized. So when you have these artists out there saying, hey, we're not making as much money as we used to, because of this DMCA safe harbor. What they're trying to argue is that because YouTube doesn't have to enforce copyright, so if I upload a bunch of music that I don't own, YouTube has to wait for the companies to tell them. That means that they're in a better negotiating position, that they can charge lower rates because they know that, hey, if Universal Music Group decides to just pull out and not renew their contract, we'll still have a bunch of their music coming up because of all the pirates.
How insane is the music industry? So there are a couple of things that really annoy me in this, if my initial reaction didn't inform you of this already. I'm guessing it's all about the politics of it and trying to get a leg up in the negotiations, and that's the basic strategy, I'm guessing. However, first of all, the way the content ID works has its positives and negatives, but as we are going to discuss in a minute, it has some very disturbing side effects if people try to game it. And the other thing is the DMCA and the safe harbor provision in general are incredibly important to the way the internet works. If you don't have safe harbor, there are huge portions of the internet that just cannot do business. They have to stop immediately because they are responsible for every single thing that happens on their
Think of
their platform.
Any single entity that allows users to upload things, if the music industry gets their way, would have to stop. Now maybe they wouldn't have to stop entirely, but they would become liable for every single piece of copyright infringement uploaded by users, which some people have argued would increase copyright infringement for those people who decided to stay in business because the users wouldn't even feel liability anymore.
So do we know what they're proposing? Do we know what they want? Because what they're not happy about is, I think, to anyone who understands the internet, not just the best way to do things, but in many ways the only way that this thing can work. It's almost like they're going to a car and they're saying, hey, you know those wheels that you have, they're really inconvenient. You should get rid of those. You're like, well...
They're basically saying YouTube should be responsible. There was that court case that we had earlier this week that said that, hey, you know what? If an employee has seen a copyright infringing material, but they haven't received a notice from the copyright owner, then you don't lose your safe harbor provisions. And so they want to change stuff like that. They want to make it so that, hey, you know what? If you're a big company that has a bunch of things, you should be taking action to fight copyright. You should share some of the liability of it.
So basically they want YouTube to become the police of their site.
Which YouTube is already doing. YouTube is one of the few companies out there that goes well beyond what the DMCA requires them and put in place Content ID in order to help satisfy Viacom in that lawsuit to say, fine, we'll proactively help you search out stuff. So that's why, folks, this is a fight between billionaires. YouTube makes something like $9 billion a year. At least that's the estimate for 2015. Although they didn't make a profit, the record industry revenues rose 0.9% in 2015 to $7 billion. That's the first rise since 2011. So their prospects are starting to change. They make billions of dollars. YouTube makes billions of dollars. This is a fight over who should make more billions and who should be paying who how much. YouTube already pays the music industry. The music industry just says, we get a better deal from radio, from internet radio. We even get a better deal from Spotify. So we want a better deal for you. So we're going to put pressure on Congress to change the DMCA to force your hand to negotiate it with us better. What they don't care about is you or me, about our ability to upload something. And that's what Patrick was alluding to earlier. If you get squashed by Content ID and you're not a big partner with YouTube, you have almost no recourse to get a strike pulled off of your account. It can happen, but more often than not, somebody just gets a YouTube video pulled off, even if it's fair use, because it's so hard to deal with Content ID and it's so tilted in the favor of the big rights owners.
And it goes even farther. Basically, if you want to use a piece of video or audio to do commentary, which is the most common use of fair use on YouTube, and the Content ID identifies that piece of content, it signals the content owner, and they can block you. They can monetize your video for themselves. They can do whatever they want. So that's already a problem. And I think the music industry claiming they don't have the tools or the power to handle the copyright infringements is hard to believe. But even beyond that, already the way it works now leads to content ID scammers who upload a piece of content, get it identified by the content ID, and then go claim videos that they have no right over. So obviously, if it is a very popular piece of content, probably the actual owner is already going to be in the system. But I've seen multiple cases where a troll, a content ID troll, would go and upload a piece of music that maybe is for sale on license-free sites. I can't remember the
Creative
the name of
Commons,
it.
something that's even public domain.
Right, that's-
sometimes on scams, sometimes not. Sometimes it just happens that, like, I use a piece of public domain music in my video, but Channel 2 has used that same piece of public domain in their video, but the entire video is submitted to Content ID, and I get crushed for using that, even though they're not actually claiming copyright on it. They're just using it in their video, and Content ID is dumb enough to think, well, it's there in that copyrighted video, so it must be copyrighted.
And then the owner has the power to rip your ownership away, not the ownership, but the monetization or the use of your content that you've created with that piece of music that they didn't have the rights to. Hopefully those things get resolved, but there are, as I was saying, there are also trolls that do this and actually go and monetize your content for themselves, even though they don't own this at all, and that's what they're actually doing. So in this context, what would the music industry want? Do they want Google to actually go in, and when the Content ID system identifies a piece of content that uses another one, do they want it to automatically be deleted? Do they want it to?
Let me tell you what they want, Patrick. They want the ability to threaten Google with more lawsuits. They want the ability to say, hey, you didn't catch these uploaded videos over here, and so we're going to take you to court unless you give us a higher rate to license our videos. I don't think they actually, I can't say this for sure, but I don't think they actually care if they get YouTube to reduce the number of unauthorized videos on YouTube, because nobody's bothered to find out if this is a problem. There are absolutely no numbers that I'm aware of that say how many unauthorized music videos exist on YouTube. Nobody cares. What they want is leverage. They want to be able to force YouTube into agreeing to a higher royalty rate.
And you know what? There are a couple of things that really bother me here. The first one is how they're enrolling the artists who, honestly, I don't think they understand the intricacies of all of this, but they are signing, some of them do, I'm sure, but I don't think, when you read the explanation by the music industry, they're thinking that DMCA is too permissive. And and that's the second part.
Yeah, it's a psychological thing, right? The artists see that their revenues have been going down, and that's unassailable. Revenues have been going down for years, and even if they're starting to turn around, the artists aren't seeing that yet, maybe because the music industry has never been very generous with them. They also see people putting their music on YouTube without their permission, and they get angry at that. So that's all, if I'm an artist, that's all I need to know, is like, yeah, YouTube's letting these people do this, and I'm not making money, and so I'm going to sign this.
And that is exactly my point. They are, because I don't think we can conclusively or even reasonably assume that this is the exact correlation and that the DMCA is responsible for this. And the music industry is pointing fingers and saying, look, artists, the reason you're making less money is because the DMCA is not stringent enough. And the second part of my outrage comes from the very dangerous use. Basically, they're making into a tool that DMCA and that safe harbor provision, and that's incredibly dangerous because it's not just about YouTube and Content ID and music revenue. It's about the way the internet functions. So it seems, like this wouldn't go far enough that it would threaten the status of safe harbor, but the way they're arguing about it is for it to be threatened. And this is a very dangerous stick to wave around because, it's like, silly analogy, but you're waving a torch in a fireworks storage area. And you're like, oh, look, this, and if it catches fire, it could break a lot of things.
Yeah.
So
and they don't care. They're like, all I care is that
exactly.
the owner
Don't
starts agreeing to a higher rent. If I set off the fireworks, that doesn't bother me because I'm going to leave the fireworks store to begin with. So yeah. What can you do? Well, you could write your congressman or your senator if you live in the United States, or your representative elsewhere, I suppose, although this is specifically right now a U.S. issue, because that's where the record industry is targeting their efforts, is towards that. Because really, nobody wants the artist to make less money, but nobody has done any work to show that changing the DMCA in any way causes artists to make more money. There has been no evidence. No one has taken an approach to copyright law that says what actually maximizes its value for creating art, which is really what copyright law is supposed to do. It's not supposed to support anyone's particular business. It's supposed to create an environment where more art gets made. That's what copyright is about. It shouldn't be propping somebody up over somebody else. All right, let's get to our pick of the day. Dave in Too Damn Sunny and Not Enough Rainy Los Angeles writes that about 2 weeks ago, the GPS in his smartphone stopped working. He says, luckily, I found a temporary solution to my problem, Bluetooth GPS in the Android App Store. The free Bluetooth GPS app uses the developer options built into the Android operating system to create mock locations that developers use to test their GPS-enabled apps and send real GPS data from Bluetooth-enabled GPS devices. I tried it out this morning, and it works great. Back in the day, smartphones like my old Moto Q didn't have built-in GPS, so I bought a Bluetooth GPS device to go with it back then. So I dusted that off too, charged the battery, and fired it up. I'm no longer lost in the urban jungle.
Amazing.
Send your picks to us, folks. We want to hear from you. What do you like? Feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com. You can find more picks at dailytechnewsshow.com/picks. Real quick, our messages of the day. A lot of people writing in response to Veronica's rant yesterday about Waze sending people down side streets, saying they don't think Waze should be prevented from routing people down any public street. I mean, if you live on one of those public streets, you might feel differently. But some of you said, no, I live on that street that everyone's going down now. It's a public street. You get to drive on it. That's what it's there for. And then Kimberly, who is actually one of those people who says, yeah, I'm one of those people with people getting sent down my streets. I don't think it's a problem. Kimberly is the Texas teacher in the chat room and on Reddit, said, I actually hope that Waze and other GPS crowdsourcing apps can find a way to work with local planning and emergency services. The local planning can use the information to better plan road building, create alternative routes during construction. Emergency services can use the crowdsourced information during situations like the recent Tax Day and Memorial Day floods in Texas. Several good people drowned because they turned down an open ramp that was filling with water around a curve. The ramp was open only because emergency services had not gotten there with the barriers yet. The ramps are narrow with no other exit, and these people were trapped. They couldn't turn around and go back, and if they did, they risked head-on collisions. Most probably never even saw the water until they hit it due to darkness. So hopefully, a way to send emergency alerts to GPS systems to warn people and crowdsource data to emergency services could be developed. Waze was quick to mark 3 roads around me as closed or flooding before emergency services actually got the barriers up, and that may well have saved someone's life.
Maybe, well, yeah, for sure. That when you read it, that seems like it should already be happening, kind of. I never thought of it, but when you describe it like this, obviously it's, yeah, please do that. And maybe there are ways of doing this by crowdsourcing as well. I mean, it works well enough to signal the presence of police speed. What's it called? Like when they
speed traps.
Yeah, speed traps.
Vehicle stopped on shoulder ahead is incredibly accurate. And yeah, I think that's what Kimberly's saying is some of the crowdsourcing in Waze did work that way. So yeah, let's make that work even better. Big thanks to Patrick Beja. What are you working on these days to tell folks about?
So many things. I guess Pixels is the show that I would recommend to you today. It's a show about gaming news in general, and we had a gigantic E3 summary with Scott Johnson last week. So it's one easy place to get all the news that was important at E3, all of the conferences. We watched all of it, analyzed and dissected all of it, and gave you the most important parts. It's available at FrenchSpin.com, and the show is called Pixels, so go check it out.
DailyTechNewsShow.com/support is the place to go if you're new to the show and you're just listening to it for free. Now, those who've listened for a long time know if you don't have the funds, it's fine. Just tell other folks about the show. There's all kinds of ways to support the show. But if you do have $1 a month to spare or more, we'd love to have it to make the show better. If you're willing to support us, go to dailytechnewsshow.com/support. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. You can give us a call, 512-59-DAILY. That's 593-2459. Catch the show live Monday through Friday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern at alphageekradio.com and at diamondclub.tv. And visit our website, dailytechnewsshow.com. Back tomorrow with Scott Johnson. Talk to you then.
This podcast is part of the Frog Pants Studios Network. For more information about this and other shows, visit frogpants.com. Audio programs so good, it's like you're there.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Push-chung.
Boom! I was born ready. I was.
You were born breathing, too.
Was he?
I
Some
hope
of us
so.
weren't. Had to be
Well, you probably weren't. There's that point in time when you get to,
Yeah.
you're still attached to the umbilical, you get all your life.
Yeah, you're still, yeah, exactly. You don't need to breathe. Actually, I'm thinking no one is born breathing.
That's true.
You start breathing
Good point.
a little while after,
Yeah.
so there you go.
Do we want to call this Rumbler in the Tumblr? Or DMCA still less popular than the YMCA?
I like DMCA. It's less popular than YMCA.
I like that
Any
too.
others in there that caught your eye there, Roger?
I liked it. Sounds kind of silly, but better safe harbor than sorry.
I kind
I'll
of
vote
like
it
that
on
one
the
too.
awesome. You see it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of like it, and it makes sense.
Although I have to give an honorable mention to McCartney urges swift copyright laws for you and you too.
It's a bit long, but
So
Yeah.
does Taylor Swift make all these decisions like her, or is it her
I think she is involved in them. I have a feeling that it is a committee that she has a significant presence on, because she actually takes a lot of this stuff into her own hands and speaks extemporaneously about it. So she knows about it, but I have a feeling that her business manager and advisors kind of team up and decide on a direction.
tag team?
you're talking about Taylor Swift?
Yeah.
Well, she was pretty vocal about the Apple thing herself,
Yeah,
specifically.
exactly.
So
Although
I'm thinking she
I'm
knows.
almost certain she and her managers had a conversation before she
Yeah.
got vocal, right? So,
Yeah.
But yeah, like that's a good example of her being able to speak about it. Like she knew what she was talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Ooh, so there's one thing we didn't talk about. Maybe we should have.
There are more than one thing, but which one are you noticing?
Did you see the French Google Images thing?
No.
I think it might not have reached English news yet. Basically, it was just voted in that I hate my country sometimes. Google Images will now have to pay a copyrights tax, basically, to copyrights owners for Google Images.
Oh, that would have been a nice thing to talk about in
Wait, so,
the
like-
context of the YouTube.
So,
It
like,
slipped my mind.
Search, even like, so if you do like an image search, say Eiffel Tower, and it pulls
Yeah.
up pictures, you have to pay each of those people.
Well, I'm guessing they will pay an organization that handles the way, they...
Like a rights organization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, if you can't find the author of that piece of content, then the organization itself keeps the money.
Yeah, that's the way a lot of it's the way the Authors Guild in the United States wanted to handle the books that Google was scanning.
Yeah, but I think in the case of the books, maybe some of them you wouldn't know who wrote them, but most of them you would. In the case of Google Images, first, how is that even gonna work? And my God!
Would it work?
Maybe it's a good thing we didn't talk about it. My head would have exploded.
So wait, how would it just be on the Google France website, or
well, no, as we know, France believes that the right to be forgotten should apply to all instances of Google worldwide, no matter whether French people are looking at it or not. So therefore, it'll probably apply worldwide.
What if we just unplug
I don't know, but
France?
I think that is ultimately what might need to happen.
Well, you know what? Google pulled Google News out of Spain when they passed a law saying that they would be forced to pay rights to have excerpts.
Yeah.
I am curious whether Google will just pull the image search in France and say sorry.
Yeah, I don't think that would be possible. Like, how would it even work? Do you have to identify each image and know who it belongs? Well,
they're tagged.
Copyright owner
You can
then?
filter the search by copyright or Creative Commons or public domain.
Of course,
so my guess is what they'll propose is some like you say, some third-party agency will go through and say, we see these many images showing up, so you owe we've figured this amount of money, and then it'll be up to that third party to divvy up the money, which, like you say, won't go to a lot of people because they won't be able to find all of them.
Yeah, that's like technically, I'm guessing they can do like a certain amount per year, or like a license, or maybe it's going to be a percentage. But then how does it even?
Well, again, it's easy for Google to do if they want to. They'll just be like, they'll be billed and they'll pay the bill, right? It's actually great for Getty Images. Any of the big image companies will say, like, yes, there are these many, we are owed this much money. They'll collect a large amount of that. So that it's big companies and big governments coming to an agreement that they don't care about the rest of us. They're not going to bother to try to give the rest of us any money, and they're not trying to protect the rest of our rights. They're trying to protect the rights of Getty Images. Big image. It's all about big image.
It's big image and big stock photos.
Shane is saying they're links to the real pages they're on. Yes, of course, that's what they are. I guess that's a way to identify the owner. But then if I use one on my page.
Well, and do you get more money if it gets searched a lot? Or is it just being listed in the index?
Nobody knows.
Yeah.
What if you're not
this is asinine.
Like if there's pictures I've taken that show up on image search.
Yeah.
Would I get a cut?
Yes, you should. From France.
I certainly. Well, okay. All right. Now this is getting interesting. Does that mean that anyone's images that shows up there, because I'm sure I can find a way to make my images show up. Do I get money from that rights collecting agency thing? In that case, I might be all for that system.
They're fencing in the Wild West, just like the real West.
All right, actually, following that rage-inducing piece of news, I have to go because I have to prepare stuff. I'm leaving tomorrow morning. So.
Okay. So you're just going back to France to visit?
Yeah, for a little bit.
Cool.
So, no problem for next week's show.
Excellent. Well, then we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you, guys. Bye, chat room. I'm looking at the chat room as I'm saying bye. Bye, chat room.
Bye, Patrick.
Bye, Roger. Bye, Tom. Bye, Ellie.
Sleeping Ellie.
I wouldn't mind a couple of pennies. Actually, no. What am I gonna do with a penny?
Well, that's the thing. You're gonna get pennies.
Everyone's gonna get pennies. No one's gonna be happy. Like, what's the point?
Alpha Geek Radio went off for some reason, and I don't know why. It's trying to reconnect, but it can't. So if you're watching this on video, pass it along to your audio friends. But the entire audio will be available, I think, still, because I haven't stopped it in the treasure chest. Ah. I'm almost done. I'm editing the ID3 tags now.
What if they paid out in baguettes?
Baguettes.
It'll be interesting. I mean, it's definitely a formalization of a lot of the stuff on the internet.
Yeah, but it's impossible. It's trying to treat the internet like paper. It's a horrible idea. That's not what Google is doing. Google is showing you. And here's the thing that always gets me about all this stuff, and Google News was the same way. You, as a website owner, can stop them from indexing your image and showing it on Google. They don't want that because they want people to discover the images. They also want to get money. They want both things.
Like if you get a Google image hit on like an iStock photo, you get a watermarked image. It's like
totally.
Unless you're using it for a kid's birthday card and they don't know what a watermark is.
Right.
It's you have to pay money for
Is that what you do with Ellie? Is that why you said that?
She's young. Her eyes aren't.
She doesn't know. You can't say a watermark.
That's just a special.
That just means we love you more.
It's gonna be weird.
DMCA needs to be revised the other way. It needs to be reduced. We have way too much copyright protection. We also have way too much copyright infringement, but obviously having laws doesn't make it less. So strengthening the laws is not going to do anything.
Well, that's the thing about laws, is that laws really only work if the society is willing to go along with them.
That can sound like a cop-out, but the fact of the matter is what you should probably have is a law that reflects society's values, which is society believes in fair use. They believe that if something is relatively easy to get, that they should be allowed certain uses of it. So either you have to come up with a passive way to collect the income, which is like, the internet tax that it gets divvied up, which is kind of what France is talking about with Google Image, to be honest. That is a more reasonable way to approach it. Or you just change fair use laws to say like, well, you know what? Things on the internet are infinitely copyable, which makes them less valuable as copies. So you need to find other ways to monetize them. The thing that you can monetize on the internet is access, not copying.
And that's the thing is like, you can put photos up and you can just offer only like a limited resolution version, right? If you want something that you can blow up like into a 12 by 11 frame or something, you're gonna have to pay money. But if you're happy with a 400 by 200 image, all pixelated up hanging in your hallway, it just seems kind of weird. It seems like there's a lot of bureaucracy.
Well, because you're trying to treat digital things like paper. And the problem is everyone's using this as a way to benefit their own particular industry rather than doing what's actually beneficial for the entire economy. Everyone who makes money on paper and plastic wants to keep making that same amount of money on digital. And so they want laws that will try to formalize that rather than saying, well, you know what? The same amount of money is going to be made under digital. It's just going to be made differently, and it's going to be made possibly by different people. And we just have to live with that. And people are like, well, I don't want to live with that. Musicians can make money under digital. It just has to be done differently. You can't force it to be done the old way.
It might be a generational mindset change shift.
I used to think that for sure, but I've noticed that a lot of younger creators are also more protective of their intellectual property than my generation because they grew up in a world where they were constantly being hammered that you must respect intellectual property. And so they're like, well, then I'm going to respect mine too.
Well, I think part of it is also like people see it as an opportunity, however remote, that it's going to be some sort of financial reward down the line, and therefore you take proactive steps.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's what they've been taught, and that's what I'm saying is everybody wants to make money off the old way. That's motivating everything. Yes, absolutely. But this whole musicians thing that Irving Azoff kicked off, this is all about getting Google to bend over the barrel, putting pressure on them to negotiate for a better rate. To a certain extent, I don't blame them. I think that, yes, you should do everything you can to pressure YouTube. What I don't want is a law that changes things for other people just so you could get a better royalty rate.
You mean rent seeking? You don't like rent?
Well, no, it's not exact. No, it's not rent seeking. That's not what they're doing. They're doing lobbying pressure to change one thing that can help them, that will have wide impacts on other industries, and they don't care about that. And I don't want the collateral damage is not worth it.
But isn't that the very definition of rent seeking, like adjusting laws to benefit you without necessarily
That's
having?
not how I understand rent seeking, but maybe I don't understand it right.
Well, I type in search in Wikipedia, but I have a baby on me.
All right. I think I've published the show, and I think I did it right. So thanks, everybody, for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.